Hi there, BookTube. My name is Nathan, and I am the Rambling Reviewer. I call myself that because I ramble in my videos. And sometimes I review things. Today I thought I would do my, New Rules November. That is an event, to read science fiction in the month of November. Short form. Science fiction, that is. And it is coming to an end. This is the last week of New World's November. It is almost over, and I'm very, very sad because of that. But also excited, because, gushing time, emotional gushing. I've got to meet some absolutely wonderful people because of this. Some of the channels who I, have been interacting with, the creators who I've been interacting with, I already knew of their channels. Some of them I watched frequently. Some of them I knew of and I was subscribed to them, but I didn't watch a ton of, and some of them were completely new to me. But none of them were people who I considered friends, because I barely knew them. And now some of them I do. And I have been, talking to many of them, asking them for recommendations, talking about books, joining buddy reads with them, and it's just been wonderful. So I am sad that it's almost over. However, I'm happy because there are even more things to come. More buddy reads, more group reads, plans, lives, and I have the feeling that those will continue, hopefully. I hope they do. Into May with Horror Mayhem, and then into New Rules November 2023 and beyond. If I have had so very much fun. But now I better get into the actual the actual wrap-up, because week 3 was our classic week. And I didn't read as much as I was wanting. I read 7 stories. Usually I would read 7 or 8. I was hoping to read 9, and then at least 9, and then read 1 book, but I only read 7 short stories. It's the week before Thanksgiving, so it is what it is. I wish I would have read more, but I have 1 week left to make it up to myself. But this week was our classic week. Anything published before 1965. And 3 of the stories were by one author, who, I need to warn you, my lovely viewers, that this author is dangerous. I have heard it told many times that this author has cooties, and that anyone who reads this author will themselves become infected with cooties. In fact, our booktubers has become so infatuated with this author that I believe he has cooties. And that is Sean D. Standfast, and of course the author is Clifford D. Simak. I read 3 stories by him this week. I read Desertion, which I read out of this big book of science fiction, which is the title, but also a perfect description of this book. It is edited by Jeff and Anne Vandermeer, and contains stories from 1,000 authors, or maybe 90. And I read Desertion out of this. It is a story that follows a scientist, or an administrator, or a doctor, or something. I don't really remember. I don't think it ever actually says. Well, he's not a doctor. He's either a scientist or he's an administrator for a science facility of some sort. I don't believe it's really ever stated. But he is on Jupiter, and he is trying to get it to where human beings can survive on Jupiter, because they have kind of made it to where they can survive on the planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, but they haven't been able to survive on Jupiter yet. And this is because of the extremely high pressure on Jupiter, but also because of the noxious gases. And the way that the scientist or administrator, whatever he is, whatever his job description is, deals with that is he uses a kind of science that turns humans into lopers. Lopers are a Jupiterian, Jovian, I don't know what the term would be, of Jupiter. They are a species that is of Jupiter. And they are described as sleek, with, I believe, like, a very thin body. I don't really remember the actual description. But they can survive on this planet. And I won't go too much more into that because it is, I don't want to spoil it. The story deals heavily with his relationship with his dog. And it also deals heavily with the idea that I really love of humans, or anything. It doesn't have to be a human. It could be a animal, an alien, an artificial intelligence, whatever. But how they react with their setting. And this was wonderfully glimpsed in this book. My one problem with the book is I kind of wish it would have kept going. You get a hint of even more fantastical things at the end. It's not so much the fantasticism that interests me as it is the question of how the human in this case would react to the fantastical. How would they react to living on the planet Jupiter? How would their minds change in response to it, in response to the particular physiology, and the particular brain of the Loper? What remnants from the human brain would there be? And that just fascinates me, and I kind of wish I would have got more of that. But it's a theme that I'm hoping that he explores in some of his other stories. Either way, though, I did really, really enjoy the story. And it made me want to read 2 more stories by him. So I did. First of all, I read a story out of this, which I will be showing off a lot in this video. This is the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1A. Sorry, 1. The letters are for the second volume. And it is edited by Robert Silverberg. Now, the story that I read out of here was The Huddling Place, which was my favorite story I read this week. The Huddling Place follows a man who is the patriarch of his family. He is the patriarch because his father just died. Sad. And actually, the beginning stage of this story is the opening, I guess, scene, rather, is a funeral. And it has kind of the tone of, like, a horror story, which I really like, because although there's nothing supernatural, there is kind of a horror to the story. And the horror is that this character has lived his entire life in, sorry, something just came up with my phone. Has lived his entire life at his family home, save for one trip he took for a few years to Mars. Getting into that theme again of people going to other planets. But the reason why he's always lived there is because in this future, this post-scarcity future, that is possible. People don't need to huddle around a specific spot where all the mechanisms are, where all the jobs and all the goods are. In this world, that stuff can be obtained regardless, I guess, of where you live. And what happens is that these this character, as well as his family, develop an extreme form of agoraphobia, which is very topical to the modern day, because even though we still live in cities, there does seem to be a strong aversion to going out, whether it's agoraphobia or social anxiety, and the reason being the internet. So the psychological mechanism, but not the cause, is accurate, I think. Like Clifford McCad was accurate. And very well done, because there is kind of a suspense that builds up to a conflict, because the character has to leave his house for something. He leaves once early on because he is seeing off his son, who himself is going to Mars. But then something else happens that would pull him away from his home for an even longer period of time, and he'd have to go even further to Mars. Now, why is that? I'm not going to tell you, because that is the huge conflict of the story, is will he leave or won't he? And it was absolutely wonderful. Now, the first story I read out of this volume. It is Over the River, I keep saying that wrong. Over the river and through the woods. This follows a old woman who lives with her husband. It is set in like the 1800s, mid to 1800s. And 2 kids show up. And that's about as far as I can say about the story without getting into spoilers. But the science fiction here is very, very minor. What I mean is, there is a definitive science fiction aspect to it. I don't mean that. What I mean is, the character only at the very end realizes what's going on. She sees a glimpse through a letter of a wider, more fantastical conflict, I guess. But it's only a glimpse. It's focused a lot more on this woman who has these weird kids show up. This isn't... I'm trying to think of a good way to explain it. It would be like if, the only example I can think of would give too much away, so I'm not going to give an example, unfortunately. But I do want to keep talking about stories, because after the systemic story, I also read one more story out of this volume. I read Damon Knight's The Handler, which is extremely, extremely short. And it's the first book in this volume. Sorry, it's the first story in this volume. And it's about a big man, a very loved man, but the big man is actually a robot being piloted by a small man inside of it who is not loved. And that's about the gist of it. People love the big man, but they don't love the little man. And I didn't really like it that much. It was very moralizing, and I actually don't mind moralizing stories. But when I tend to prefer moral life stories that look at actual ethical issues, you know, like Corbin Smith, which are more societal issues and stuff that are kind of obviously wrong, but that it makes sense why society would be built the way it is, or stories that look at ethical gray areas. It's just this kind of like, don't be a dick to little people, I guess. I didn't particularly like it. I thought it was too on the head, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But I also read 3 more stories out of this volume. Those were The Weapon Shop, Mimsy Were the Bordeaux, and Arena. Out of all of them, out of these 3, probably my least favorite was Mimsy Were the Bordeaux, which I did like, which I did enjoy. It is about a man in the future whose time-traveling device goes back in time, carrying with it certain devices that engender certain changes in a group of children who find it. Actually, it's one child, but he shares it with his sister. I like that. I love this idea. I really, really do. It's an idea that you also see in, although a little bit different, in Childhood's End. I can't say Childhood's End. I always want to say Childhood End. Childhood's End. It's different. They don't turn into like dogs or anything, but they do. The toys do alter their intelligence, and I love this. Word of a sneeze there for a second. It does alter their intelligence, and I love the idea of the different ways that human intelligence could grow based on the environment and the way that children would react with their upbringing and the things that kind of build their understanding of the world around them. What I didn't like... Well, actually, one more thing I did like. I liked the suspense. The suspense was really cool. The way it builds up to the end. And even the way it uses the idea of Mimsy Were the Bordeaux, which is a line in the poem Jabberwock by Lewis Carroll. I liked that. I thought that was kind of cool. And probably one of the better uses of Lewis Carroll's writing in a book. What I didn't like were the adults. I was so annoyed by the adults in this book. First of all, the psychologist. The 2 parents bring in a psychologist to look at the kids. And it makes sense they would do that. That's fine. If they had gone maybe a little longer with maybe having a psychologist interview the kids and like you can see that something's wrong, but he doesn't know what it is. It's like a build up. What's going on? That would have been fascinating. But the psychologist just knows. He literally looks at the toys and it's like, oh, this is made by some other kind of like intelligence, and the kids are like, they're changing. How in the bleep did he know that? Did he pull it out of like thin air? He saw a toy and he suddenly knew. I mean, yeah, these toys look like really weird. Like the adult mind can't figure it out. But I can't believe that he would just pluck it out of thin air like that, and it bothered me. And then the way the parents talked. Maybe he was trying to go for like a posh, overly philosophical attitude, which if he was, good job. Who wrote this? I can't even remember who. I can't remember who wrote this. Louis Paget. If that was what he was going for, he succeeded, but he succeeded too much that I didn't like it. But again, I did like the build-up, the suspense, the ideas. All that was good. The kids part was good. I just couldn't get on with the adults at all. At all. So that it's the second story the story I liked the least, save for the handler, which I really didn't like. But it's still a pretty good story. Also consider at least I'd say 3 out of 5 maybe. The second one that I liked a little bit more than that one was Weapon Shop, which is by A.E. Van Vogt. And this is a story about a man who lives in an empire called Zir, I believe. And it's ruled by an empress, and he is a patriot. He is totally gung-ho about the empress. And in his small little community, where nothing has ever changed, a weapon shop appears out of thin air. A weapon shop which has a slogan. I don't actually remember what the slogan is, which is important because it kind of built into the theme of the story. Nope. Where is it? And that theme is actually really interesting because... Okay, no. Find weapons. The right to buy weapons is the right to be free. Kind of looking into the, right to bear arms just in general. And thereby, enforce your freedoms. This is a pretty political story. I don't know what the purpose behind it was. If it was looking specifically at perhaps Nazi Germany, because this is written in like 42, I think. So very much could be a reaction to Nazi Germany. I really should have done research on this beforehand, but I didn't remember to. But that is an interesting avenue to check into. What was the author's intention? What was the author thinking about when he wrote this? But the weapon shop is more than just a weapon shop. It is also, this actually is, spoiler, a massive rebellion of sorts against the Empress, who is, of course, tyrannical. And only through losing everything and being shown the cruelties of the world that he lives in, but also the tacit cruelties and the I can't think of the word. The non-tacit, there we go. Cruelties of the Empress. Does he start to see the good of the weapon shop and the good of owning weapons and of rebelling against the Empress? And I like this story, especially the shadowy way that the weapon shop seems to work. It's very weird. It's like a massive global thing of weapon shops that have some kind of communication and teleportation aspects between them. And like a government in on themselves almost. And I like that shadowy aspect about it, the fact that it's not clear, and it's very, very weird. I quite like this story. Now, the one I liked the best out of these last 3 was Arena by Frederick Brown. This is a story that is very pulpy, very fun. It's about a intergalactic war that's about to happen between humans and the Outsiders, this other alien race, which you find out are kind of a spherical entity with no obvious, like, sensory organs. It never mentions it having any eyes or anything, but it does have kind of like ridges on it, and there are tentacles that come out of it. And this is going to be a war to the death, where they're evenly matched, presumably evenly matched in terms of firepower as well as amount of fighters, and which will result in the total annihilation of one of the races, and a kind of pyrrhic, I don't know how to pronounce that word, pyrrhic? Whatever, victory for the other. Because there'll be so much loss, even on the side that wins. And in this, there is another alien intelligence that takes two combatants, two scout ships, puts them on one world, and has them fight to a death. There is a force field that is dividing them, and they have to figure out a way to kill each other, because whoever kills the other one, their entire fleet will survive, and the one who dies, its entire fleet will perish, as well as presumably their home planets, which kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But I mean, genocide even against aliens who seem to be Daleks is a little bit reaching. But the man tries to make peace, but the alien, who communicates via telepathy, seems to not be on with that, because he immediately thinks of hateful, horrific things, of destroying and killing the man. Even when the man says, yeah, we make peace here, then everyone survives. So yeah, definitely, it's never really explained why the alien has this genocidal desire to kill people. It's not clear if it's just, like, blatantly sadistic. It does kind of torture a lizard to death, so it may just be sadism. It could also be, like, cold, calculating, like, aggression, almost like I don't know, a cat or a praying mantis, I'm not sure. Or whether it's, like, thoughtful, intellectual genocide. It's not clear at all. And it's really not needed to be, because the story works well as just a pulpy adventure. With this character who has to try to figure out how to survive this encounter, and how to kill this other creature. So I really, really enjoyed it. So that is everything that I read. Now, for the week 4, what will I be reading? Well, first of all, and I dropped some stuff. The bulk of my reading will be taken up by this. War with the Robots. This is edited by Isaac Asimov, Patricia S. Warwick, and Martin H. Greenberg. Patricia S. Warwick actually wrote a critical study in the 80s of robots and AI in science fiction literature, so apparently she is an expert on the subject. But this was written in the 80s, so it doesn't go at all. It doesn't have everything, obviously. And I've already started reading this. I started reading Moxon's Master by Ambrose Bierce, and The Lost Machine by John Wyndham. And the other thing I'm going to be reading this week is not AI related, but I was supposed to read it this last week, week 3. And so I'm going to read it now. And that is Clifford D. Simak's All Flesh is Grass. This will be the first full-length work I'm going to read by him, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, a small TBR, because I want to actually read all of it. If I have time, I'm going to add some extra things at the end of the week for the last 2 days. But I may be playing catch up on this, so we'll just see. Anyways, this video has gone on for a very long time, so I will let you all go now. Have a great day, have a great Thanksgiving, because when this airs, it'll be Thanksgiving, and I hope you're enjoying your New World's November. Christmas is almost around the corner, so I hope you'll enjoy that too.